I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. تتواصل الحرب الدائرة.
Thank you, President. The war between Russia and Ukraine is continuing. The logic of confrontation and escalation is also continuing, as well as strikes and polarization. And this continues in spite of the diplomatic efforts that have recently been successful in gathering the two parties together in the city of Istanbul in Turkey for the first time in more than 3 years. Unfortunately, the losses in terms of innocent human lives, including children, women, and older persons, these numbers are still increasing. And we're also seeing an increase in the suffering of civilians and displaced persons, and people are simply having to flee their homes and flee the conflict areas. In addition, this conflict continues to spread, and it has economic impacts not just in the region, but in the entire world, including in developing regions that have been affected seriously by energy and food crises that have resulted from this. Algeria has warned on several occasions about the flow of weapons from conflict areas, which exacerbates the ferocity of the war and moves us away from any potential peaceful solution. The escalation of tensions will only lead to further hostilities, which could themselves lead the entire region into an interminable conflict and crisis. Therefore, today we would like to reiterate the following points. First of all, the escalation is continuing, and the bloody armed conflict between the two parties remains a major concern for Algeria. Algeria condemns the violations of international law, including international humanitarian law. We call on the parties once again to show restraint and to curb the escalation and to respect their international commitments, prioritizing the protection of civilians. Targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure is unacceptable in any circumstances. Under international law, this is forbidden. Secondly, we would once again like to express our deep concern about the use of lethal weapons and ammunition in the conflict areas. We call on the parties to ensure that these weapons do not fall into the hands of criminal or terrorist groups or extremist groups, which often use them in attacks against innocent civilians to impose their control. 3, we reiterate our appeal to the parties to ensure that dialogue prevails and to use diplomacy, focusing all efforts on trying to find common understanding through direct negotiations, with the goal of a ceasefire in mind and to achieve lasting peace in the region on the basis of the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, while also bearing in mind their respective security concerns as appropriate. By way of conclusion, Algeria reiterates its unwavering commitment to support any diplomatic efforts that aim to put an end to this war and to find a just, lasting solution that can satisfy both parties. We call on the international community to redouble diplomatic efforts at all levels to bring about the necessary conditions to facilitate negotiations between the two parties to bring about peace and security in the region.